Abe Fortas was a lawyer and a Supreme Court justice. He was born in 1910 in Memphis, Tennessee. He was the son of Orthodox Jewish immigrants from England. He studied law at Yale Law School and became a professor there. He worked for the federal government in different roles. He also had a private law practice in Washington, D.C. Fortas was a friend and advisor of Lyndon B. Johnson. He helped Johnson win a disputed Senate election, and he also represented Johnson in other legal matters. Fortas argued for the right to counsel for poor defendants in Gideon v. Wainwright, 1963. He won the case and changed the criminal justice system. Johnson nominated Fortas to the Supreme Court, and he replaced Arthur Goldberg, who became the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Fortas was confirmed by the Senate without much opposition. He wrote opinions on free speech, civil rights, and criminal procedure. He supported the rights of students, minorities, and prisoners. In 1968, Johnson wanted to make Fortas the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He nominated him to replace Earl Warren, who planned to retire. But Fortas faced a lot of resistance from the Senate. Some senators opposed his liberal views and his close ties to Johnson. Some senators also questioned his ethics and finances. Fortas became the first Chief Justice nominee to be filibustered by the Senate. His nomination failed to get enough votes to end the debate. Johnson withdrew his nomination and Warren stayed on the bench. The next year, Fortas resigned from the Supreme Court after another scandal. He had accepted money from a businessman who was under investigation. Fortas was the first Supreme Court justice to resign under pressure since he returned to his private law practice until his death. Abe Fortas was a close friend and advisor of President Lyndon B. Johnson, who nominated him to the Supreme Court. 3 years later, Johnson tried to promote him to Chief Justice, after Earl Warren announced his retirement. But Fortas faced fierce opposition from a coalition of senators led by Strom Thurmond, a Republican from South Carolina. They had several reasons to block Fortas' nomination. First, they disliked Fortas' liberal views on civil rights, criminal justice, and free speech. They accused him of being an activist judge who legislated from the bench. They also feared that he would continue to influence Johnson's policies from the court, as he had done before. Second, they wanted to delay the nomination until after the 1968 presidential election, hoping that a Republican would win and appoint a conservative Chief Justice. They argued that Johnson was a lame duck president who had no right to fill such an important vacancy. Third, they uncovered some ethical issues that cast doubt on Fortas' integrity. They revealed that Fortas had received $15,000 for giving lectures at American University, which was funded by private donors with business interests, before the court. They also discovered that Fortas had accepted $20,000 from a financier named Lewis Wolfson, who was under investigation for insider trading. These controversies and allegations led to a filibuster by the Senate, which prevented Fortas' nomination from getting a vote. After several weeks of debate, Fortas asked Johnson to withdraw his nomination. He remained on the court as an associate justice, but his troubles were not over. In 1969, he resigned from the court after more details about his relationship with Wolfson emerged. He was the only justice to resign under a cloud of scandal. The nomination of Abe Fortas as Chief Justice was a controversial move by President Lyndon B. Johnson, who wanted to secure a liberal legacy on the Supreme Court and prevent his rival Richard Nixon from shaping the judiciary. Fortas was already an associate justice on the court, and a close friend and advisor of Johnson. He had written several landmark opinions on civil rights, free speech, and due process, such as Gideon v. Wainwright and Tinker v. Des Moines Independent Community School District. However, Fortas faced fierce opposition from Southern senators from both parties, who resented his support for racial integration and voting rights. They also accused him of ethical violations, such as accepting a $20,000 fee from a financier who was under investigation for insider trading. Fortas became the first nominee for Chief Justice since 1795 to fail to win Senate approval, after a filibuster led by Republican Senator Robert Griffin and Democratic Senator Strom Thurmond. The failure of Fortas's nomination left the Supreme Court without a Chief Justice for more than 7 months, until Nixon appointed Warren Burger. Nixon also had the opportunity to fill 3 more vacancies on the court during his first term, replacing Earl Warren, John Marshall Harlan II, and Hugo Black with Harry Blackmun, Lewis Powell Jr., and William Rehnquist respectively. These appointments shifted the ideological balance of the court to the right, and marked the beginning of a conservative era in American jurisprudence. The legacy of Fortas's nomination can still be seen today, as it set a precedent for filibustering judicial nominees and politicizing the confirmation process. It also showed how presidential elections can have lasting consequences for the composition and direction of the Supreme Court.